Mr. Speaker, honorable members, I will begin, as most others have, with a word of remembrance, of condolence, and of solidarity with and for the people of Fancy who were most directly affected by the tragedy at Rock Gutter, and of course, the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, who have all felt most deeply and most personally what took place in Fancy. Mr. Speaker, on the morning of the disaster, I was present at Rock Gutter, and I must confess that sometimes I wish I was not present at Rock Gutter that morning, because combined with my own personal feeling of helplessness, I saw things that are better left unseen, particularly when talking about little children. Mr. Speaker, I was there the following day. I was there for the consecration of the burial ground and visited the Fancy Government School for an event that was the Friday, I believe, the Friday before the funeral. There was an event there that evening. The Friday? Yes. All of us, Mr. Speaker, will have different memories or different moments that affected us most deeply. And mine, not only of some of the mothers who could not fully grasp, even the day after and the day after that, that their child was no longer with them. But the children of Fancy, all over the village, some of them unrelated in any way by blood to the tragedy, who didn't understand everything, but who certainly understood, as children do, more than we realize, and whose innocence and their innocent questions and their innocent comments and their own outlook were at once penetrating, heartbreaking, and yet somehow reassuringly optimistic. Because out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, hast thou ordained strength. Mr. Speaker, I was unable to attend the funeral or some of the other events, or indeed the first few days of Parliament, because I was on official business in the United Arab Emirates for a conference of the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and I will come to how that affects the budget shortly. I was in Washington, D.C. at the Caribbean Energy Security Summit, and I will also discuss that because it is related, and in San Jose, Costa Rica, for the third summit of the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. I'll deal with all of those, Mr. Speaker, as I present, but suffice it to say that in the context of the tragedy at Rock Gutter, the world weeps with St. Vincent and the Grenadines. From those various trips abroad, I have received, on behalf of the people of this great country, and I convey now to this honorable House, heartfelt messages of condolence from high government officials in the United Arab Emirates, the United States of America, Cuba, Venezuela, Costa Rica, Argentina, Mexico, and each and every member state of our Caribbean community, CARICOM. And I did not raise the issue of the tragedy of my own volition with any of them. They had already heard of the terrible events, and they all expressed their sincere condolences and solidarity. And I, of course, on behalf of the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, express our gratitude for their thoughts and prayers and solidarity at this time. Mr. Speaker, moving to the budget and our debate on the appropriation bill. I will approach the budget in the spirit of the Honorable Member for Central Kingstown, who says that he comes to this House not as a representative of a party, but as a representative of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines generally, and his constituency more specifically, and that we are debating the nation's business and not party business. And I applaud him for that, because it is a sign of his own growing maturity as a parliamentary representative. Because I still remember his words in this honorable House in September 2009, when he said, and I'll quote him, that he's a deep and abiding party man. And despite the merits he saw in the proposed constitution, and I'll quote him again, "Let me make myself very clear. I will be voting solidly with my party on this matter," unquote. And I am applauding him in all sincerity, Mr. Speaker, because I think that his approach in this budget is one that we can all adopt to move our nation forward. And he has inspired me so to do in this particular debate. All of us are party men and party women, and proudly so. But I commend him on his new vision to see matters beyond party when he comes to this honorable House. Mr. Speaker, the debate that we have heard from the honorable members of the opposition has been inconsistent at best. I did not hear the honorable member for West Kingstown, but I was able to hear either live present here or listening online or subsequently through postings on the internet, the contributions of all of the other members of the opposition, and indeed most of the members on this side of the Honorable House. And of course, we get the usual nibbling at the margins of national development, where one side presents a cohesive vision for nation building and development. We get a hodgepodge of ideas here and there that, even if implemented, would do precious little in the grand scheme of things. I heard the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, and he offered, I believe, in his 3 hours, 3 ideas. And I will comment on 1 or 2 of them. 4 hours. And the Honorable Member speaking to the other end, in terms of seniority, the Honorable Senator Lewis repeated his estimates debate and used the words vulgar and vulgarity so many times that I was afraid that permanently in my mind, the words Linton Lewis and vulgarity would be permanently twinned.
But you have to ask him. No. Yes, but you can't just stand and assume the authority. You cannot stand and assume the authority of the House. If you stand,
There doesn't need to have an argument over it.
No, I am not.
I have never used the word vulgarity with respect to the budget. I said it's a vulgar budget. If my learned or the honorable senator doesn't understand, the word vulgar means pretensive and excessive with respect to the information in the estimates. So if he doesn't understand, at least he understands now.
For the future reference of the honourable member, that is actually 35B, to clarify or elucidate, and in that case I would have to give way to you, because that is not a point of order. In any event, Mr. Speaker.
Leave my brother name out of
Mr. Speaker, I took the time to read the Hansards that are available electronically. We all received a CD from 2001 forward. Most specifically, the Hansards related to the shadow minister of Foreign Affairs, the honorable member for the Northern Grenadines, because I wanted to see if I could discern a policy, a philosophy, an outlook on budgetary matters related to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or to foreign policy generally. And I am sad to say that from 2001 to this present budget debate, the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs has never mentioned the budget of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Never once. He has mentioned foreign policy on 2 occasions in those years, both involving Venezuela, but never the budget allocated to the ministry or the result indicators. I presume, well, a lot of talk about tourism, but not tourism writ large, tourism in Bekwe. I presume his silence reflects support for the budgetary allocations and the manner in which the ministry is conducting its business. So even though he's not here, I would like to thank him on my behalf, on the behalf of previous foreign ministers, Dr. Douglas Straker and Mike Brown, for his tacit endorsement, at least in that regard. Mr. Speaker, I don't say that to be facetious. Foreign affairs is an important matter in the development of a small island developing state. The last 4 words in the title of this budget address is talking about the midst of exogenous challenges, challenges from outside affecting what is happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we have to position ourselves to deal with outside challenges. We have to engage the world. We have to be proactive. We have to present St. Vincent and the Grenadines on an international stage. We have to ensure that those exogenous factors are minimized. We have to educate the people that are affecting us outside on what they are doing to us and to influence change. But never once a comment on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, despite the tremendous impact that foreign relations and foreign affairs have on the development of this country. Mr. Speaker, attacks on PetroCaribe continue apace. From the estimates to this debate, it seems to me that the one unifying factor of the honorable members of the opposition has been the attack on PetroCaribe. Nothing, by contrast, or next to nothing, has been said about the impacts of the Christmas floods. Even though the Christmas floods caused loss and damage amounting to 17% of our gross domestic product, over $330 million, and even though our immediate response in this year's budget amounts to $50-odd million, nothing of any significance is mentioned on that, a $300 million hole in our GDP and our response to it. But everyone wants to speculate about PetroCaribe. It reflects, Mr. Speaker, a continuing, concerted, coordinated attack on Venezuela by certain elements of this society. I recall, Mr. Speaker, the deplorable attacks and allegations against Venezuela and Hugo Chavez during the referendum campaign. During President Chavez's visit to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I recall in past election campaigns when they said Venezuelan warships are off the coast of Union Island, waiting to pounce if the results don't go the right way. Dishonesty. I recall the Honorable Leader of the Opposition's allegation that the St. Vincent Medical College closed down because of our relationship with Venezuela. And I even recall more recently when Ecuadorian soldiers showed up in their uniform in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and people said that the Venezuelans had invaded. But what has been Venezuela's response to this sort of vitriol and scaremongering? Fuel storage facilities. The Prime Minister discussed the fuel storage facilities. LPG bottling facilities. Cooking gas shipments. Grants, loans through the Alba Bank. Vision Now. Scholarships. One laptop per student. The Lives to Live program. The Farmers Support program. And of course, the international airport at Argyle. What has Venezuela done to you to inspire such vitriol to the government and people of Venezuela, who are giving from what little they have in solidarity with the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Mr. Speaker, Western media has been predicting the demise of the Bolivarian Revolution since the day it started. Yesterday, Monday, marked 16 years since President Chavez, God bless his soul, assumed office in Venezuela. 16 years, 5 presidential elections, 2 referenda, countless local government elections, all of them reaffirming the Bolivarian Revolution in Venezuela. Yet, the death watch continues. Maybe today will be the day that Venezuela fails. It is a staple of Western political thought and Western journalism. And I accept that. But if you come to the House armed with some Western journalism, armed only with your breathless, up-to-the-minute newspaper articles as your evidence for the impending collapse of PetroCaribe and Venezuela, forgive me if I do not join in your hysteria. Mr. Speaker, I love journalism. I know you do too. In fact, it is our first love, professionally. I particularly love print journalism. It's how I was trained. I went to university in the United States and did a degree in journalism. I worked at American newspapers. I worked at magazines. I have a deep and abiding love for journalism. I have a deep and abiding love for journalism and for freedom of the press and for the untrammeled operations of journalists, even though sometimes they overstep individually, collectively, it is a good thing. But I am also fond of quotes. And there are two quotes about newspapers that are apt in this instance. One is by a famous Chicago journalist, Ben Heck, who said that trying to determine what is going on in the world by reading newspapers is like trying to tell the time by watching the second hand of the clock. So take off the other two hands off the clock and watch the second hand and tell me what time it is. And that is the analysis that we've received on one side of this honorable house on PetroCaribe. The other quote is by Thomas Jefferson, great American. And the quote is that the man who reads nothing at all is better educated than the man who reads nothing but newspapers. Of course, newspapers can and do and will play a very important role in educating people. No, me included. But good Lord, Mr. Speaker, you come to this honorable house to talk about an agreement without reading the agreement? By reading newspaper articles about the agreement? Worse, newspaper articles about the agreement in the Dominican Republic and bring it to apply in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Dominican Republic has 10.4 million people. It owed PetroCaribe $4.1 billion US dollars. You bring that article and apply it to our context? The Dominican Republic has almost 100 times more people than St. Vincent and the Grenadines and owed almost 100 times more money. But this is what you bring? All of this Googling of the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times, and nobody could Google the agreement? It's online. Read it. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 lawyers on the opposition benches. 3. In fact, 3 practicing lawyers, because the lawyers on this side, with the exception of the Honorable Attorney General, haven't practiced in a while. We're doing law from memory. Would any of those practicing lawyers stand up in court and opine on a contract matter without reading the contract?
They wouldn't.
Would they base their arguments on hearsay? Gleaned not in their case but in other cases? They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because they are lawyers of merit. So please, if you would treat your private client's business with greater care and concern, treat the people's business with a similar care and concern. Mr. Speaker, incidentally, and the Honourable Member for the Northern Grenadines isn't here, but it seemed I noticed an interesting dichotomy between dueling newspaper articles. It appears that they can quote newspaper articles to say what is wrong in the world. But when the Honourable Minister of Tourism tried to quote newspaper articles to say tourism is doing well in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, rubbish, hogwash. Yeah. New York Times, what's that? I don't understand why the publication is valid for one thing and not the other. Mr. Speaker, before I leave this PetroCaribe issue and move on, I am a fan of reading WikiLeaks. But because as a student of international affairs, it is important for me to know how the largest diplomacy, the most assertive diplomacy in the world today thinks and acts. So I read them not to hear who say what, because a lot of that I don't believe, but to understand how they think. So let us look at just 2 WikiLeaks on PetroCaribe to get some insight as to the other perspective, the perspective other than that of this government, and the perspective that seems to be trumpeted by the people who have attacked PetroCaribe at every turn in the estimates and budget debate. Mr. Speaker, a cable from Bridgetown, Barbados, dated May the 19th, 2006. This is the Bridgetown Mission writing to the United States government. It's classified. It's called PetroCaribe Update number 21. It says, this is the other thinking, in 2006. PetroCaribe will supposedly save money in 2 ways: by cutting out private oil companies in favor of state-to-state oil transfers and providing concessionary financing. In practical terms, these imagined benefits are unlikely to accrue to Eastern Caribbean microstates. So here's the US saying, PetroCaribe is not going to benefit any countries in the OECS. Why? Well, the governments are more municipal than national. These countries are already struggling to uphold all the trappings of nationhood and survive as independent states. They have neither the resources nor the expertise to start and sustain state oil companies. Furthermore, their crushing debt loads, some of the highest in the world, leave them ill-suited to incur any financial additional obligations. They go on to say, PetroCaribe has thus far been a failure in the Eastern Caribbean. Given the inherent resource constraints of the OECS microstates, insisting on the formation of state-run companies and construction of oil import and storage infrastructure on each tiny island could mean the Eastern Caribbean countries will not see PetroCaribe oil for years. That was the US's opinion on PetroCaribe. It is a 2006, it is a failure. It will not benefit the OECS, and we won't see anything out of it for years. And that is the unfortunate echo that I hear coming out of the echo chamber. Now that it has caused benefit, they wish it to go away because it does not fit with their worldview and a position that they adopted from day one when they said they would never sign and then they would unsign PetroCaribe. That is fine as an ideological position. We can debate it. But don't close it in figures and pretend you're coming here with a budgetary argument. Don't do that. The Honorable Senator Francis spoke about getting $30 million from the OPEC oil fund. Nobody said, well, oil prices are falling. How are they going to get $30 million from the OPEC oil fund? Nobody said it. We, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, just got $15 million US for geothermal development from the Abu Dhabi Development Fund. And I'll talk about that. But nobody said, Abu Dhabi oil prices falling, you ain't going to get that money. Venezuela. Venezuela, Venezuela, Venezuela. We're tired of it. They have been and continue to be good friends to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You can listen to the WikiLeaks, the newspapers, or those in your own echo chamber. I will listen to the words spoken to me last week in Costa Rica by both President Maduro and the Foreign Minister of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, who reassured me that PetroCaribe will continue. Delcy Rodriguez, who is the new foreign minister and who worked previously in a capacity in their state-owned PetroCaribe agency, said these people don't understand PetroCaribe. They don't understand its importance. They don't understand its terms, and they don't understand the solidarity that these countries have for one another. That is why they argue against it. Nobody is saying, for example, that when Venezuela started PetroCaribe, they gained market share. They weren't selling oil in the Caribbean before PetroCaribe, you know. But now they are selling oil in almost every Caribbean country. But that benefit is not seen. When oil price is high, low, or in between, they're going to have to sell oil. And now they have a market. But nobody talks about that. Mr. Speaker, it seems that the United States Googled the agreement. Because in this one from Caracas, all the way back in 2005, in their WikiLeaks, they had the data here that the Honorable Senator Luke Brown said. 14 countries, and they list them, are currently signatories to PetroCaribe Energy Cooperation Agreement. The amount of oil that may be financed depends on the price per barrel of oil, ranging from 5% when the price is $15 US to 50% when the price is $100 US or above. Buyers have 90 days to pay for the oil that is not subject to financing, and so on and so forth. So they had read the agreement. If the United States, you think Chavez sent them a copy? If the United States could read PetroCaribe agreement, and it's available online, and it's on my Facebook page, good Lord, take a gander before you spend years attacking the thing. And then attack it. Know your facts before you decide to distort them. Mr. Speaker, a few quick comments on...
Mr. Speaker, excuse me standing in the...
You look good there, man.
Thanks. The honourable member has chosen to give way, and...
This is point of order clarification. Let's start getting...
Misrepresentation, Speaker.
Misrepresentation.
First of all, Honourable Speaker, I think we wish on this side of the House to make it clear that we have no difficulties or displeasure with the government and people of Venezuela. Historically, we have established diplomatic relationship, have had exchange visits with Venezuela, and we continue to wish the government of people of Venezuela well. Our contention with the PetroCaribe, or as I have raised it, is the fact that when the agreement was signed with St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we requested in this Parliament a copy of the Memorandum of Understanding and or agreement with Venezuela. In fact, to this point, we have not seen Memorandum of Understanding and agreement with Venezuela. That agreement and or understanding, which is a legal relationship, is different from the factual matrix that may be outlined in the agreement itself, because that is a sovereign debt responsibility of the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This Parliament has not seen that document. So to continue to harbor that we have not gone on the site to see A, B, or C is not the point. There is an obligation and a responsibility for the government if it enters into an international agreement with the ALBA, for which the PetroCaribe is a part, that it be properly brought to the attention of this Parliament and shared with us.
PetroCaribe is not part of ALBA.
The PetroCaribe arrangement came out of your ALBA arrangement. It does. In fact, it went further to say that the PetroCaribe and that ALBA is responsible not just for oil, but the entire energy position in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, or all of the members who are signing on. It's not just confined to the oil trade. It went beyond that to speak to all aspects of energy policy. Let us be clear about that. It spoke to all aspects of energy policy. And that is of wide and far reaching that it ought to have been brought here before us. And it was not for us to ferret it out of you. I just want to make that point.
Speaker, I know I'm not on my feet. I don't know whether you'd permit me an indulgence in the light of what the Honourable Member for Central Kingston said.
No,
Mr. Speaker, the PetroCaribe agreement predated the ALBA.
Formation of ALBA. That's the point.
That's the first point I'd want to make. Secondly, we have brought to this Honourable House documents in relation to PetroCaribe and also ALBA. We have also brought even the predecessor agreement. In any event, Mr. Speaker, there is a misconception by some. In this jurisdiction, the ratification of a treaty is not done by Parliament, but is done through the Cabinet, and we will inform the country in that regard. This is a different thing than a jurisdiction like the United States, where a treaty agreement is required to have the endorsement constitutionally, the approval by the Senate, or indeed in Antigua, where statute law in Antigua requires that all treaties be given parliamentary approval. And the document in relation to PetroCaribe did in fact come here, and more importantly, it is a public document.
Public document.
Is there, you want to say?
Well, is it a practice that Cabinet ratifies treaty without informing the Parliament? Or is it a rule of law? Because us being, our interpretations are, even with respect to our House rules, would indicate that if there are no rules which would apply, that the rules of England would apply, the Ponsonby rules apply in the United Kingdom. And even though Parliament may not ratify the treaty, Mr. Speaker, a treaty which is a multilateral treaty, which requires expenditure from the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, it is only proper that that treaty be laid before that House, so at least we can see it. It's proper for that to be done, because at the end of the day, taxpayers, Mr. Speaker, I'm clarifying what the Speaker
Yes,
said.
I understand. Are you talking about what is proper, or are you talking about what is law?
The issue is this. What the Prime Minister has mentioned is not law. And it's a practice that he's speaking about. The issue is this, is that we are talking about a treaty which will require the financing from the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The people of St. Vincent elected members of Parliament to be here. At least that multilateral treaty should have been laid before the House of Parliament. Not necessarily for ratification, but should be laid before the House of Parliament.
Mr. Speaker, how could he say that if it is not a matter of law for it to come here, and he tells me that what I said is not law? The law of the land, as advised, the law of the land as a matter of executive act, treaties are ratified by the Cabinet of St. Vincent, of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. What the Honourable Member is talking about in relation to the application of certain rules vis-a-vis the British Parliament has absolutely nothing to do with the validity of the ratification. No, but this is what the Speaker asked you, and then you said the records show.
I did not say the Speaker the treaty is not valid.
But you say that what I said is wrong in law.
No, I never said so. I asked you to show me where it is.
You did say that.
I didn't say so.
We would now have a
I never
continuation.
said so. Mr. Speaker,
We will now have a continuation
Yes,
of the
I never said
presentation
so.
by the Honourable Foreign Minister.
you show me where the law says that. There's no law in St. Vincent saying that.
Honourable Member.
Sometimes I'll go to a nightclub just to watch people dance. I have seen some dancing on the head of a pin today that rivals any amount of dancing I've seen anywhere else. Somebody says that the agreement says below 50% there is no grant element. And the agreement actually says something completely different. And in response, instead of saying, mea culpa, they say, what about ratification? What about this issue? What about that issue? Is PetroCaribe part of ALBA? Is ALBA part of PetroCaribe? Does the agreement say that there is no grant element under $50? It either says it or it doesn't.
That's the point.
And the agreement is a public document and has been since it was signed. And in a decade of attacks on PetroCaribe, none of the attackers took the time to read the document. I'm very happy when the clock isn't running to have a debate about treaty ratification or application. Very happy to do that. Particularly happy to do that with the Honorable Senator Lewis. But not now. I am talking about what an agreement said. What you said an agreement said. We get in there. Mr. Speaker, we get in there. Mr. Speaker, I want to make a couple quick points though on the issue of oil prices going down. Generally, as others have said, as the Honorable Prime Minister, Honorable Senator Brown has said, the falling oil prices are a good thing for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Yeah. Certainly in the near term. They benefit oil importers, it saves some money at the pump. More tourists hopefully will come because travel will be cheaper. But we have to be cognizant of a few things amidst the falling oil prices. First of all, that it will not help St. Vincent and the Grenadines as much as it will help some other countries that would maybe have more industrialized base, maybe based on commodities, export of commodities. So it won't benefit us to that extent. It won't benefit many oil exporters, naturally. Not just Venezuela, Iran, Iraq, Nigeria, countries in the Persian Gulf. And we have to hope that their cut in revenues does not exact a social cost in those countries and worldwide that is difficult for us to deal with. And most importantly, it will not benefit in our shared and collective fight against climate change in this crucial year. Mr. Speaker, I have spoken in this honorable House before on the issue of climate change. I have used the floods as a jumping off point, the Christmas floods, to talk about it. I have used discussions on the estimates to talk about it. Climate change, uncontrolled, will destroy St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's not hyperbole. And this year, when the Honourable Member for the Southern Grenadines talks about houses that are in the sea is taking back properties, he's on the nice edge of what can happen throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines with climate change. I empathize with what he's talking about. I feel that pain because the sea is rising. Our homes, our infrastructure, our roads, our hotels are on the sea. Climate change can make this budget worthless. 1 or 2 episodes, hurricanes, floods, landslides. This budget, we have to come back with a supplementary budget. If that happens, God forbid. And in this year, we are talking about a global climate treaty to control climate change. And all this year, governments are going to be negotiating what to do to deal with climate change. And coincidentally, in the year that we should be talking about getting away from fossil fuels get cheap. It's not an accident, Mr. Speaker. Saudi Arabia is on record saying that they are lowering the oil prices for two reasons. They want to drive the American shale oil producers out of business, because if Americans start producing oil, they won't buy Saudi oil. And they want to drive renewable energy producers out of business by selling oil at a price that makes it uneconomical to switch from oil to solar or wind or geothermal or something else. And oil prices, low oil prices are good. Don't get me wrong. But we must consider the falling oil prices and the timing of the falling oil prices in all of its contexts. And in this year, when the world is fighting climate change collectively, the falling oil prices changes the calculus. And we have to be concerned that it is not simply an attempt to get past the Paris summit and then suddenly oil prices start to climb back upwards after a weak agreement is signed that does not protect countries like ours. We must be vigilant. All of us are in this boat together.
I'm seeking clarification from the honorable member. He's putting on the agenda, quite rightly, two very, very important subject matters: energy and energy policy, and a stand that we should take, and for which I think we all agreed on climate change, its imminence, its importance, the destructive potential. But I do not know that I'm getting it clearly from the honorable member that he's attaching the proper weight to the fall in energy prices and the immediate benefits. Let me finish, please, because I do not want us to trade one off under the other. Because it must be of immediate importance, and immediate for me means today, that we address the energy question properly, honorable member.
So which point of clarity is this? Seriously.
He is attempting to suggest that a greater weight, that's how I'm interpreting him, ought to be attached to the climate change issue. Mr. Honorable Prime Minister, I am explaining my...
No, but why are you being diverted, honorable member? Speak to the point.
That's why I miss David Brown, you know.
Mr. Speaker.
I want you to get through. I want you to get through.
Mr. Speaker, my honorable friend, the representative for Central Kingstown, for whom I have a great deal of affection, I will admit, has spoken longer collectively over the course of this debate through his various interventions than any minister on this side of the House. I want to say goodbye to the students. Thank you for coming and joining us in this meeting. And the honorable member for West Kingstown is probably already paying for the lunch. I want to acknowledge, because I failed to do so earlier, the very large presence of my staff from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Information Technology. And their sheer numbers suggest to me that the honorable leader of the opposition may be right. We could do with a staff cut. I'm, of course, joking, but I am watching to see how many of them stay with me throughout the luncheon interval. Mr. Speaker, I want to also mention a fact that has not been mentioned. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela has the largest proven crude oil reserves on the planet Earth. no country in the world has more proven crude oil reserves than the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. They have 300 billion barrels of proven crude oil. And in the Orinoco tar sands, the US Geological Survey says another 513 billion barrels of oil exist there. At current production levels, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, if they don't find another drop of oil other than what they've discovered, has enough oil to power them at current production levels for 500 years.
Wow, that's good news.
Mr. Speaker, so when we're talking about this or that blip, because we're trying to see the world by watching the second hand, tell the time by the second hand, let us have an appreciation of the ally to our south and their capacity not to help us just now, but in the future. Mr. Speaker, the honorable, the members of the honorable members on the opposition side governed in this country in a time when oil was $20, $25, you know. And a time when they were getting $100 million from bananas because of a preferential trading arrangement, you know.
Correct.
But I wish we were governing in those times.
I tell you.
I wish we had $20 oil and $100 million bananas. What would we have done if we had those sorts of assets at our disposal? Mr. Speaker, in any event, another matter that was not sufficiently ventilated, I believe, after the Prime Minister presented, in all of this conversation about energy and PetroCaribe, is the fact of the coming game changer of geothermal energy in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mr. Speaker, currently, roughly, subject to correction by those who know better than I, but in rough terms, 80% of the energy we generate in this country is from fossil fuels. We get roughly 20% from hydro. It goes up and down based on the rainfall, the season. And we get a little under a megawatt from solar. By 2018, when the geothermal phase 1 plant is supposed to open, we will completely flip that equation from doing 80% fossil fuels to 80% renewable energy. We will go from importing 80% of the oil we need to chopping that down to 20% or below. But they're talking about PetroCaribe. What are you going to do? Even if post-2018 we didn't squeeze another drop of oil out of any sponge anywhere in the world, even if we didn't get any more oil, 80% of our energy needs would be supplied by us. And more to come. But in all of the hysteria about PetroCaribe, no one is saying what a wonderful thing it is that we have over 100 megawatts of geothermal energy in the hills of the Soufrière Mountains. And that we will be producing our own energy cheaper than we can do with fossil fuel. Nobody talks about that. It's as if 2018 is a light year away. Geothermal energy is coming to this country. Mr. Speaker, I returned.
I know the honourable member is speaking about interventions, but I mean, he's new to the party. The honourable member is speaking about matters on which other people have researched and written. I left Vin like 14 years ago, Mr. Speaker.
But what's his point to that?
I left Vin like 14 years ago, and these matters of renewable energies are matters on which I have written and printed and researched and have done inside of Vin.
Okay. But did you talk about it? That's what I'm talking about. Did you talk about it? Did you talk about it? Mr. Speaker, the Abu Dhabi Development Fund, in collaboration with the International Agency for Renewable Energy, IRENA, had a program. They said, we will give we will loan 15 million US dollars at concessional terms to the countries that can produce and show us the best, most feasible, most reasonable, most transformative plans in the field of renewable energy. They sent out a call. Show us what you're thinking of and back it up with data. 80 countries applied for the loan. They cut the 80 down to 20. They asked the 20 for additional factual and scientific information. Ellsworth Dakin, the head of our energy unit, I want to mention his name for the records, provided additional information as requested. So from 80 to 20, they cut the 20 to 18 after they got the additional information. And from those 18, they chose 5 countries from around the world that had the best renewable energy projects. One of those 5, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The Abu Dhabi Development Fund, and I'm sure the Honorable Prime Minister will deal with it in his wrapping up, has confirmed that they will loan us 15 million US dollars at 2% interest with 5% grace. 5 years grace. 20 years. Over 20 years. 5 years grace. 15 million US dollars. And that will go a long way to us funding our part of the public-private transaction that we're doing with Reykjavik and Emira. I don't know what the Honorable Member for Central Kingstown has read, and I'm sure he's read extensively on the subject, and written, and thought, and spoken. But what we are doing is building a 10 to 15 megawatt geothermal plant in St. Vincent and the Grenadines by 2018. I have a letter here from Reykjavik Geothermal, dated 6 January. And I'm not going to read all of it because we have a confidentiality agreement with them. But they say that their second resistivity campaign was successful in filling the gaps that they had, connecting the dots and being able to trace the resource from the summit towards the eastern shore of the island, the summit being the summit of the Soufrière volcano. The eastern part of Mount Soufrière showed typical resistivity structure for high enthalpy geothermal systems. That's basic steam geothermal. I'm sure the Honorable Member for Central Kingstown knows this. I have interpreted all the soundings, and here attached with this memo are some of the preliminary results shown in the resistivity cross-sections. Again, we are happy with the results. Yes. That's what they say. Yes. The resource is observed in all the surveyed area at different depths. The depth to the reservoir is shallowest in the northern half of the survey area from the summit of Mount Soufrière and so on, and then they go on to suggest where wells should be drilled. And they are happy with the size and the quality of the geothermal resource we have. They have already spent in this country 1.5 million US dollars of their own money doing this research, quietly in the hills of Soufrière, while people reading and talking. We're doing. And I certainly look forward to that day when we have the geothermal. Mr. Speaker, all of the talk about energy again. Nobody mentioned the falling prices of renewable energy in the world. In the last 4 years, solar PV models, photovoltaic modules, have fallen 80% in price. Wow. What you priced out 4 years ago is no longer valid. Renewable energy is getting cheaper by the day. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is on the vanguard of small island developing states implementing renewable energy in all aspects of life. This island will be a green island
Yes.
with 100% of its energy use provided by renewables. And that is a good thing.
That's good news.
Mr. Speaker, moving on. The Honorable Leader of the Opposition mentioned the issue of trade and investment fairly heavily. And he mentioned that it should be a priority of foreign missions, that foreign missions should focus on trade and investment. And I agree with him. It's a good point. But it's an old point, because we have been doing that. Those policies are reflected in all of the actions of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about geothermal. The very first meeting between this government and executives from Emira and Reykjavik Geothermal the very first meeting was brokered, organized, and held in a foreign mission. And that is going to be a $50 million investment in this country.
In a mission.
Our mission, sorry, in a foreign country. And that's a $50 million investment. You talk about foreign missions bringing investment to this country. The current potential investors in Mount Win Peters Hope, first contact was made with by an ambassador who has been shepherding this process and our discussions. Mr. Speaker, I have emails dated last week from our British mission with various investment feelers that have come to them from this or that company. When I was in England passing through from Abu Dhabi, I sat and had meetings with the High Commissioner, who was talking about some small exports that he's investigating and getting good feedback on for some products from St. Vincent and the Grenadines to a particular area in High Wycombe. When I was in Washington, D.C. last week, Ambassador Lecelia Prince organized meetings for me and investors, an investor that is operating out of the Southern Grenadines, who wants to expand their operations and do some other work with us in climate change. Existing investors in Bekwe were engaged through foreign missions and then handed over to Invest SVG to deal with the details. Our missions are now attempting to expand the teaching of English program with countries beyond Ecuador, other Spanish-speaking countries. That is investment that they will bring to this country. And that doesn't include, Mr. Speaker, all the work that the foreign missions do in attracting foreign direct investment, in doing their consular duties, and of course, in getting assistance from members of our diaspora and friendly states when we are struck by disaster. It's a good idea, but it's an idea we have been implementing for years now. I can't even say it's my idea, because I came and met the idea from Sir Louis Straker going forward. But it's a good idea, but we're already doing it. Mr. Speaker, any suggestion that, or any perception that foreign direct investment, because that's what it was coming out of, a conversation about how foreign direct investment is lacking, is lagging, is a problem. We must attract more of it. And I agree, we must always attract more. But any suggestion or perception that we have done a poor job of attracting foreign direct investment is absolutely false. Mr. Speaker, I have in my hand a book by the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean called Foreign Direct Investment in Latin America and the Caribbean. All it talks about is foreign direct investment. It's printed July 2014, and for those interested in Googling it, it is available on the ECLAC website as a PDF file, eclac.org. And they list every single country in Latin America and the Caribbean up to 2013 by how much foreign direct investment they have attracted. In 2013, St. Vincent and the Grenadines attracted $127 million in foreign direct investment. That was second in the OECS, second to Antigua and Barbuda. No other OECS country in 2013 attracted more foreign direct investment than St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In the period 2008 to 2013, almost 700 million US dollars in foreign direct investment has come into this country. Call it 1.9 billion EC dollars. Foreign direct investment. But wait, there's more.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, the next page of the document, Latin America as a graph, Latin America and the Caribbean, foreign direct investment as a proportion of GDP, 2013. Every country in Latin America and the Caribbean, from Mexico down to Chile, listed by how much money they have attracted as foreign direct investment as a percentage of their GDP. You can't see the graph, but I'll be happy to make it available, even though it's a public document. Number one in the entirety of Latin America and the Caribbean, foreign direct investment as a percentage of GDP, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. 17.5% of our GDP through foreign direct investment. But we're talking about, or we're suggesting that we're doing a poor job. We're doing an excellent job. Yeah. And I want to congratulate not only the Ministry of Finance for their work, but also the executives in Invest SVG for the wonderful work that they're doing in attracting investment.
Honorable Member, you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's talk a little bit, allow me to talk a little bit about foreign affairs, because the time is running away from me rather quickly. Well, before I do that, Mr. Speaker, since we're talking about investment, there was a lot of talk also about our failure to attract investment and investors, particularly in the ICT sphere. I want, Mr. Speaker, with your leave, to read a letter from somebody called Andy Thorburn, who is the COO of the Digicel Group, dated December 1st, 2014. It was addressed to the Honorable Prime Minister and copied to me in my capacity as Minister with responsibility for technology. Dear Prime Minister, please listen to this closely. As discussed within recent meetings, Digicel is committed to establishing a call center within St. Vincent and the Grenadines for the purpose of providing a cable TV and broadband help desk facility in support of our regional rollout of these products and services. Call center coming to St. Vincent and the Grenadines via Digicel. As you are aware, we recently acquired a number of cable TV operations across the region, and we expect to expand upon these over the coming 12 to 36 months. The call center should be up and running by the second quarter of 2015 and will employ roughly 50 persons on a full-time basis. Mr. Speaker, I spoke to the local rep for Digicel to make sure that I could read and disclose this letter. He told me that of the 50 jobs, 45 of those jobs will be jobs for Vincentians. And he told me that as it was indicated, they plan to roll out more and more cable TV across the Caribbean. And whenever you are in Jamaica watching Digicel cable TV and you have a problem and you pick up your customer service and you call, it will come to the call center in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. You have a problem in Trinidad and Tobago, somebody in St. Vincent and the Grenadines will be answering the phone. The call center is real, it's coming, 50 jobs in the outset for the young people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Get your CVs ready. As always, Digicel looks forward to deepening our partnership with the government and people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines as we make this step towards bringing more ICT jobs to this island nation. Thank you to Digicel for the confidence that they have reposed in our workforce and the ability of our infrastructure to handle what they plan to establish here. And that is a good thing. And I know that those on the opposite side think it's a good thing. And I know that if the Honorable Leader of the Opposition were here, he would applaud that development. And I know it because in the last debate last January, he was bemoaning the closure of a call center in this country and saying, those are the kinds of jobs we need. Why don't we get those jobs in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Honorable Leader of the Opposition, here they are. Mr. Speaker, in the Foreign Affairs Division of my ministry, we have some new divisions. One dealing with Latin America because of the increasing importance of Latin America and the Caribbean. CILAC, ALBA, CARIFORUM, UNASUR, Mercosur, all of these agencies are now increasingly important, and we've reorganized ourselves to deal with that. The issue of visa waivers. I came back from the CILAC meeting. I can report to this Honorable House that you no longer need a visa to travel to Uruguay. We have signed a visa waiver agreement with Uruguay. And earlier we did one with Brazil. We hope to make the entire South a visa-free zone for Vincentian travelers. Mr. Speaker, we have a new unit on public diplomacy, because if they aren't going to talk about foreign policy and ask questions, we will have to tell the good news. So we have a foreign public diplomacy unit that we're dealing with. We are going to have a unit to deal with indices. Mr. Speaker, everyone talks about where we are on the Doing Business report, the Human Development Index, transparency, freedom of the press. But sometimes those indices are based on old data. We are going to have a unit that follows up and makes sure that these entities making these decisions are using accurate, current, up-to-the-minute information so that we reflect best in the international community. When a business person or an investor wants to see what is St. Vincent and the Grenadines is all about, there'll be accurate information for them. Mr. Speaker, and I've spoken on climate change, we are going to have a unit on climate diplomacy, among others. Mr. Speaker, in the area of trade, we talk about, in the abstract, about promoting business and investment. Prime Minister has already alluded that under Article 164 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas of the Caribbean Community, we will be using tariffs on beer, malt, aerated beverages, and some other things. Beer, you know about Hyroon. Aerated beverages, you know about Juicy. To protect our industries and help them to grow in the face of competition from more developed Caribbean countries. And we are doing that as a practical measure to help businesses and jobs in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have increased our work with the Chamber of Commerce. I don't want to steal their thunder, but we have some good announcements coming from the Chamber of Commerce and the Coalition of Service Industries that we're also working with. The area of consumer protection is becoming increasingly important, and our consumer protection law, our legal matrix for consumer protection, is insufficient to meet the modern challenges that our consumers face. We hope to improve our legislation and our education on matters related to consumer protection. Mr. Speaker, the issue of hotel development merits a mention, even though I'm not the Minister for Tourism. The Honourable Member for the Northern Grenadines read a portion of the PM's speech where the PM said that some interest has been shown locally by investors but insufficiently so, and used that to say, oh my goodness, tourism is going to hell in a handbasket. But if he had just looked up to the top of the same page, he would have seen when the Prime Minister said in the year 2014 an increased number of tourism development concessions were granted by the government to construct, expand, refurbish, and equip hotels. Several hotels expanded in 2014 and are currently under expansion. For example, the Maudstedt Group, including the Bequia Beach Hotel, Gideon Brown Spring Estate Resort, Kelly Glass's Blue Lagoon and Marina Project, Silky da Silva's Hotel Group, the Gun Beach Coma Hotel, and the recently proposed $60 million 39-villa development at Spring in Bequia, adjacent to the Firefly Hotel. Not including the 150 homeowners that have built accommodations, either for students or for the sort of tourists that Soboto is contemplating. Mr. Speaker, but he doesn't read that. It's on the same page. You didn't have to Google it. It's on the same page. But he didn't read that part. He read the part about things, the Prime Minister not being satisfied. Well, I'm glad the Prime Minister isn't satisfied because he should never be satisfied in the quest for the development of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Right. Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member for the Northern Grenadines, when speaking about tourism, because he doesn't speak about foreign affairs, but when speaking about tourism, with the greatest respect, he should talk about tourism across St. Vincent and the Grenadines, not just Beckwith. If he were here, I would invite him to lunch, maybe at the Blue Lagoon, which is a brand new restaurant in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, maybe at Beachcombers, which is expanding, maybe at Driftwood, maybe at Paradise Beach Hotel. Maybe we should talk to him about the tourism zone on mainland St. Vincent, from Hotel Alexandrina to White Sands, to Canash Beach Apartments, to Dell's Guest House, to Paradise Beach Hotel, to Sunset Shores, to Beachcombers, to Grand View, Rosewood. Look, Mr. Speaker, there is a tourism renaissance happening in St. Vincent and the Grenadines along that coast. Hotels are expanding along that coast. And that is not to mention to the young people.
Google them.
I've been to all of them, comrade. And they're wondering why they can't see Linton. I've been to all of them and they're wondering why they can't see Linton.
I'm not a foreigner.
Mr. Speaker.
I'm not a foreigner at all.
Mr. Speaker.
I'm not a foreigner at all.
The honourable.
You're a foreigner.
The honourable member for West St. George knows that there's an emerging hip strip coming from Tribar to Aqua to Barcode, Trapeze, up to no, that's Barcode, up to the place going up the VG Highway there, Chillers. There is an emerging hip strip to match the emerging tourism zone that is coming in this country. Mr. Speaker, ICT, and I'll be quick. You know, there's a reason. There's a reason. Let me give some advice. Let me give some respectful advice. Let me give some respectful advice. That is not private. It is in the public domain, the most public of books, the Holy Bible. 1 Corinthians 13, you can speak like angels. Angels. You can have the best words, but if you don't love people, you sound like a clanging cymbal on a gong. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but without love, you are nothing. This job, if you come into it for money, you'll become corrupt. If you come into it for fame, you'll become infamous. If you come into it with a sense of obligation, you'll become bitter. The only way to succeed in this job, my honorable friend, is to love people and love being among them and stop being so bitter all the time. Humble advice. Mr. Speaker, the One Laptop per Child project. We have provided, Mr. Speaker, in this country, we have provided in this country laptops, almost 30,000 laptops, 28,000 laptops at zero cost to the Vincentian taxpayer. The first set to the primary schools were provided through cooperation between Portugal and Venezuela. The last 12,500 to date have been provided by grant funding from where? PetroCaribe, Alba Bank. No cost, with the exception of little local transportation costs and so on. No cost to the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have teacher training. We have trained all the teachers in the use of these things. We have a smart lab. We have coming ICT legislation. This year, well, last year, we had the rollout by the providers of 3G, 4G, mobile broadband. CARSIP, which is going to improve internet infrastructure not only on St. Vincent but throughout the Grenadines, honorable friend, is coming. We have over 15,000 households currently with broadband internet. The speed, which was hovering at 2034 megabits a second, now you can get up to 100 megabits per second. The cost, while still too high, is falling. And of course, we have a large smartphone population. Mr. Speaker, I heard the Honorable Senator Frederick, who talks about, who is the Shadow Minister for ICT, talking about nobody's doing anything. I'm paraphrasing her, I don't have her words, so apologize if I'm inaccurate. In the area of app creation and development. Mr. Speaker, this year we have courses at the community college, at Thomas Saunders, in programming, in iPhone app development, in Android app development, in C+ programming, in code. We have competitions, the I² innovation competition. We are incubating a new generation of tech-savvy people in this country, and they are going to take this country forward. Mr. Speaker,
I don't remember. You got to wrap it up.
I'll wrap it up, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
I gave him 5 minutes.
my honorable friend Senator Lewis and I will likely in the future disagree on a number of things, but I'm sure there are some things we can agree upon in the constituency that we both hope to represent in the future. Neither one of us being successful to date, except his average and mine are different. Mr. Speaker, the Caliqua, good day, mate. Have a lovely day. You and I can have a cup of tea and discuss that at some point. Mr. Speaker, the Caliqua Census Division is the fastest growing on mainland St. Vincent. The Caliqua Census Division. With the Caliqua Census Division, for your information, is a little bit bigger than Caliqua. Because the Caliqua Census Division has 23,908 people, or 22% of the nation's population. That has grown over 7% since 2001. It is the largest census division. Now, that is not Caliqua and it is not East St. George, but it is centrally located in that area, around the environs. At this rate of growth, it will surpass Kingstown and its suburbs by the next census. Urbanization and suburbanization are taking place in and around East St. George. And we have to take advantage in the ways that, because I'm being short, in the ways that the Honorable Member for South Central Window talked about taking advantage. We have the growth of the Trinity Medical School and other medical schools.
I told him he had to round it up.
We have the Go Teacher program with Ecuador. We have further expansion in the tourist zones,
But
as I discussed.
I give you time.
We have the Argyle International Airport. And let me just say in rounding up, Mr. Speaker, and this is my roundup.
Come on.
This is my roundup because I can discuss those things at another time. Mr. Speaker, the Argyle International Airport is coming. We must all be prepared for it. Yep. All of us. Right. Because it has tremendous potential. Tremendous potential. People on one side are talking about what is going to happen. The development that will be unleashed when the Argyle International Airport comes on stream. The other side, well, should I finish already? It's taking too long. Mr. Speaker, the Freedom Tower in the United States of America, by way of reference, which was the tower knocked down by those terrorists on 9/11, took 13 years to build. They said it was going to be finished in 2006. Then they said it would be finished in 2011. Then they said 2012. Then they said early 2014. It took 13 years.
Bring it to an end.
Little St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Okay. After the crisis, we took a little longer than expected. Does that take away from the validity of this project? This project is going to turn this country around. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful for your indulgence. I won't tax you any further, and I hope this bill has speedy passage.